Have you heard about the fourth industrial revolution? If you haven't, I hope you're ready for what's coming with the economy in this video. We will talk about the new industrial revolution. Due to fourth industrial revolution, which might come as a surprise to you because as far as most people can tell, we've only had one industrial revolution and some nations haven't even got around to that one yet. All the same, the promise of a radical shift in the way that we live our lives has got a lot of economists very excited and maybe a little bit anxious, both for very good reasons. The first industrial revolution, the one that we all think is the only industrial revolution, was responsible for giving us production. This production went on to define our way of life in the modern world, where people in advanced economies have access to practically unlimited food, robust housing, and bits and bobs to fulfill every little desire that they have the world before. This was very stagnant. The idea that we have economic growth at all, where society is always advancing and every generation is richer than the one that came before. Before today's video starts, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. What are the other two industrial revolutions? Is the fourth one going to change our economies like steam engines did before? Before we start trying to predict what the future will be like, it might not be a bad idea to know what economists have classified as an industrial revolution. It depends on who you ask, but in the end, there are arguments in favor of both. Some economists think that everything we're seeing now is just an extension of previous technological advances, while others argue that we may be experiencing a new industrial revolution. Some economists will tell you they should listen to the Beatles on their 12-inch records. Historians say they are right. Personally, I think the Industrial Revolution is a shoddy term given to everything that happened between 1750 and 1800. However, there is a more broader definition that states an industrial revolution as more of a process rather than an event in history. Another type of industrial revolution is when industry causes an economic change because it opens up new opportunities for other industries to come about. As a systematic shift in technology that changes and improves the way that business is done while creating new businesses across all industries in the economy, an industrial revolution can be pretty difficult to define. For now, let's just say it's anything that provides enough of a novel difference to wean us away from our old ways of doing things. The adoption of steam power and mechanized production was when things started to change. By adopting this, not only were we able to do more in less time, but also, it played a huge role in our society shaping how we live. It has also created many new businesses and jobs across the economy in a variety of different industries. Importantly, it has done this with the intention of benefiting all industries. Additionally, one of these points is that it is different to other industrial revolutions because they were more manufacturing based, while AI will have an impact on companies in all industries. YouTube has improved the lives of businesses and creators alike in recent years. If I told someone 16 years ago that I was a YouTube channel, they probably would have considered me insane. You can't deny that YouTube has revolutionized how we watch content. Not only do people know what I'm talking about without wanting elaboration, but YouTube doesn't need to practically drive an industrial revolution either. It hasn't really changed the way that we farm food or produce cars or lend money. So then, what were those other revolutions? With the Industrial Revolution, there was a huge burst of invention and a lot of new technology. This eventually took off at the end of the 1800s and slipped into just maintaining status quo. Textiles were still pretty big for a time. This was still a huge achievement, but the machines making all this possible were still very hard to produce and limited in their functionality. You would be hard-pressed to tell a difference in quality of life between 1801 and 1851, which is not uncommon for the time period. But imagine if the world today did not get wealthier over a 50-year period, people would have lost their minds. Fortunately, for the progress of humanity, this started to pick back up again in the 70s and continued to grow until about 15 years ago. Key creations. The standardization of the ER process was an unexpected revelation. Before that, all machines were directly connected to a factory or textile mill or farm. They were custom contraptions and couldn't be used outside of their specific domain. These were custom machines, and that makes them expensive. The repairs were also very expensive because you had to get a blacksmith to make you a custom part on demand. Let's say you need new brake pads for your car. It's time-consuming to have those parts custom made, and the amount you'll spend on parts and labor combined will be a lot higher than the price you currently pay. You should think about how many people would stop driving if we had to do that every time. It's hard to imagine life without one of our probably the world's most commonly used form of transport if we were using a freaking standard for nuts and bolts and screws. What the printing press did for books, the number of machines out there working in the economy skyrocketed and their repairs became easier. Parts that fit any machine with similar specifications are inexpensive and easily accessible. The Bessemer process was one of the components of the Second Industrial Revolution. It made steel production much easier, but it wasn't responsible for facilitating it. Before the invention of steel, people had been producing metallic alternatives for centuries. It was a very strenuous process and was mainly used for guns, swords, and other things with high performance requirements. And there was a time where only steel-type metals were prominent back then. This Bessemer process, which basically blew a big pot of iron and carbon soup, made steel production easy and cheap. Experts say that this stuff is way better than iron, which is good because it's cheaper and more abundant. I did one course of material science at uni, and apparently this stuff has applications for engineering and manufacturing. I'm qualified to discuss this topic, but if you tried to build a car out of iron, it would have too much weight and couldn't support itself. The modern world is built on metal like steel. When we had these pneumatic telegraphs at our disposal, we could send information all the way across the country in less than a week. With modern instant communication tools like Instagram, people often forget what it was like to wait for days for news from a loved one. I can't name all the things AI have done for the world. But one thing's for sure, AI helped people live smarter lifestyles. They also spurred a lot of growth around the world, which made it possible for America to become the largest economy in the world. The Industrial Revolution was unforeseen at the time and is still a driving force in our economy today. We build larger ships, we have more efficient machinery, and drive bigger cars. You might not see the same lull between the Third and Second Industrial Revolution, like you saw between the First and Second. Unless you count the Great Depression, which you should not. Industrialization was by and large the catalyst for this technological growth. This is as easy to see as it is to see that in the past, businesses had to depend on computers or digitized data storage. Most jobs in the world today require at least some amount of computer interaction to get the job done. In their most simplistic form, computers have changed the way we interact with large pools of data. It may seem like technology is just making things a little better each year, and that's about it. Luckily, we are going to get some great advances soon. If you haven't heard, there are developments on the horizon that will help us make big improvements in society. As much as anything we've talked about so far, with the caveat that they need to be made a reality. A time machine is a great idea, but out of reach right now. We're not yet utilizing these technologies, but they're still relatively close to reality. The closest we have come is the creation of an AI with a general form of intelligence. To be realistic, we still haven't achieved this yet though. In both time and distance, we have come closer to artificial intelligence, which can do what computers do. Technology is getting better and easier to use, hopefully. For example, steel manufacturing has helped the economy for a while by supplying materials. AI will likely do the same with computers in the future. This is a pretty typical theme that has been arising out of all of these exciting developments economists are talking about under this fourth industrial revolution. If you enjoyed today's video and would like to see similar videos, click on this video to the right. Or maybe this video to the left might be more interesting to you. Hope to see you all in the next video. Take care and remember, stay informed, stay prepared.